Evening from the Arizona region. My name is Eric Hodson. I'm the outreach director and coach developer for our region and with USA Volleyball. And I am very, very proud and happy to welcome Joe Trinsey into our webinar series. Joe has been coaching USA Volleyball for a long time, 2013 to 2020. He helped with the gold medal at the 2014 World Championships and the bronze medal in the 2016 Olympics. He also led the U.S. squad at the 2017 World University Games and 2021 Warseka Championships. He has been working with Athletes Unlimited, I believe, for the last 3 or 4 years, I believe. He was also a coach with the women's team during the 2025 Volleyball Nations League. He's coached a lot of college institutions. He's professional coach in Korea and Germany, as well as NCAA stops at BYU, Georgia, Pepperdine, and Loyola Marymount. He writes, I think, the best volleyball blog out there called Smarter Volley. And I just want to say thank you and welcome Joe Trinsey to the podcast. Thanks, Joe.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, I appreciate it. And looking forward to talking some volley tonight.
Yeah. The first thing I want to get into is one of the things that I've really been loving about your blog and everything, and it's your triangle stats. You've developed a stat program that is not only easy and it's easy to read, but also you've done a lot as far as kind of taking it and developing practices and intentions and things with it. So that's the first thing I'm going to throw at you is let's talk about triangle stats for a while.
So, hey, excited to be talking to some club volleyball coaches here. That's where I got my start. My parents started a volleyball club in Delaware in 1997. So I've been, and it's still going. So it's almost 30 years around. So I grew up in the gym, graduated from ball boy to stat boy to assistant coach. And that's how I got my start as a coach. And then, eventually then I went on to coaching collegiate and pro and all that. But I've had my toe in the club water always. Even I was doing it full time, and then I went away from it, and now I'm coming back into it. Now with a young daughter of my own, and my wife and I starting a club here in North Carolina. So the club world's near and dear to my heart. But some of this triangle stuff comes back to actually, again, starting to coach in club with my dad and with my mom and dad. And I think a lot of people think, okay, I got a reputation as a stat guy, analytic guy. Hey, your dad must have been the same. Complete opposite. My dad was not a stat guy, not an analytic guy, more of a people person, kind of a salesman type guy. That was his strength as a coach, could really sell all of his players, great motivator, really, really with that. And, he would give me the stat program as a kid on a Palm Pilot. That's how long ago I started doing stats, on a Palm Pilot. And to come up with the stats, and like, hey, I'd be in high school or I was in college or whatever. Oh, here's this, all this, and my dad would be like, slow down. I don't need to know 1,000 numbers. I just want to know, what do we need to do at practice tomorrow? And you know what? That guidance actually really has always shaped my view on the statistics, because you can really go into 27 different things, and here's this analysis, and here's this stat. But ultimately, it doesn't matter unless it helps you coach your team better. So there could be some elements of your game plan. So some people use stats for that. Okay, how do we modify our game plan, our rotations? But a lot of it, especially in club volleyball, you got who you got. Hey, there's only so many game plans you can have. But if it affects what you can do tomorrow at practice, and it can help you train more efficiently, that's why I think things can really be powerful. And sorry, let me turn off my WhatsApp so you guys don't get that background noise. And let me bring up, I have some slides here. So let me just have that. And then I share my screen. Are you seeing a slideshow presentation that says winning the triangle?
We're good to go.
All right. Okay. So I call this the triangle, is what I call this formula, or kind of method of looking at, oops, sorry. All right, there's kind of this method of looking at stats. And because I like to think about the game in 3 different pieces that are related, but a little bit separate. and that's this terminal serves. I'll explain what that means in a second, but kind of the serve pass aspect, your ability to attack and stop your opponent on the first ball and transition, because these are all a little bit different. So your ability to serve in, serve aces, prevent aces, that's kind of one piece of the game. Your ability to pass accurately and kill the ball and prevent your opponent from doing so on the first ball out of serve receive is kind of different than also from your ability to attack and defend in transition. Again, they're related, but they're different aspects of the game. And I like, in club volleyball, right? You play best of three. I almost view these three aspects of the game as best of three series. If you win two out of these three aspects of the game, you usually win it. If you win all three, for sure you're going to win. But if you win two out of three, you're probably going to win. So let me explain a little bit about what each of these three things means. So terminal serves is any rally that's only a service error or ace. So, hey, first of all, what is an ace? For me, it's not just, hey, the ball is totally clean or the ball is, obviously shanked into the stands. I think everybody kind of sees that as an ace. But in club volleyball especially, there's some of these intermediate balls where the ball's passed up, kind of, and the setter or somebody kind of almost maybe gets a second touch, but doesn't really, or kind of gets a second touch, but it's the second touch is so out of control that the second touch that nobody can get the third touch, So it's not just the passer, and especially I would say kind of the lower level. And when I say the lower level we go, I don't mean going down to 12 and unders. I mean a lot of high school teams even. How you, whether between the setter, but also the non-setters, how you deal with those passes that are bad passes for sure, but maybe don't have to be an ace. There's a lot of that too. We'll get more into that kind of, the technical aspect of that. But just so we know, we can have a slightly broader tent with our definition of ace there, because players other than the passer prevented that. Okay, so we'll just hit a couple more things. First ball, that's that pass, the initial pass set hit sequence. Okay, did you get a kill or did you get blocked? Did you hit out? And if you're the one serving, did your opponent kill it on you? Did you block them? Did they hit out? Okay, so that's kind of its own little mini game, right? Because when you're in service, you get in this unique formation. That's the only time that you're going to be in it. You're in this kind of unique formation, whether it's row one, row two, et cetera, et cetera. You got to be in there. You got to pass that first ball up, and then you got to move. Your players are all kind of moving from their serve receive orientation, hitters and setter, to attack that first ball, and then they go to their base defense, and then they don't go back. You don't go back into your serve receive formation after you hit the ball at the net. So again, it's its own little mini game. And then finally, obviously, we got transition. Okay, the first ball attack didn't result in a kill or an error, so now teams are digging and hitting the ball over, going back and forth. Okay, so those are the three aspects of the kind of the game. Those are those three big buckets: terminal serve, which is aces and errors; first ball kills and errors and blocks; and transition kills and errors and blocks. So we kind of, let's look. There's a lot of numbers on here, but I just want to kind of know. Let's look at, these are stats from matches in the gold bracket at nationals on 13s and 17s. So I'm going to show a simplified version of this one next, but you can see all of the points that you can score. And now, excuse me, because I don't have, not too familiar. Let's see, do we have a highlighter? Spotlight, here we go. Okay. Sorry. Okay, are you guys seeing the spotlight here?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So you can see kind of down here, all the points that you add up. You can serve an ace. Your opponent can miss a serve. Your opponent can get a first ball kill. Your opponent can block a ball. Or sorry, you can block a ball. Your opponent can hit out. You can get a kill in transition. Okay, so on and so forth. That's all going to add up to 25. That's what you need to win a set. Okay, so this is when it says win, that's the average of the winning team. When it says lose, average of the losing team. So we can see it, When we're lower level, you see the 13s and unders, on average, they had 2.7 aces. And on 17 unders, 1.7. Both winning and losing teams serve more aces at 13 and under and 17 and under. Well, that's probably no surprise to many people. Yeah, there's more aces when you're younger. And then we can see the kills, right? Now 5 kills a set out of first ball, plus another 6 in transition. And you can see the big difference is at 17 under, there's more first ball kills. Again, probably not too surprising. As you go higher level, there's fewer aces and the teams pass better and they can kill more balls out of serve receive. If we I keep switching back. Here's like a kind of a simplified version of this and how some of these points get scored. So that top line, that's actually from the last NCAA Women's Championship, Penn State, Louisville. And then that middle line, that's the U17 that we just saw there from Nationals. And then the bottom line is kind of a typical U15 team. So not at Nationals, just kind of an ordinary 15 and under team. So you kind of see it, all these trends here, right? The lower level you are, the most common source of points is not even kills, it's opponent errors. You know, a typical 14 and under team, 15 and under team, the other team is going to score half the points for you. Okay, as the level gets higher, you have to earn more of those kills. You're going to get fewer aces because your opponents are going to allow fewer aces. So then you also have to allow fewer aces. You're going to block more balls, but transition kill and defense is still going to get you the majority of the points. And first ball becomes more important. Like you're still going to need to kill balls in transition, but first ball kind of gets 50-50 with that. So kind of how that, if we go kind of back to this element, we can, this idea of the triangle, we can see all 3 are in there. You can see all 3 of those mini games. Can we serve more aces, give up fewer aces, serve more balls in than our opponent? Okay, we can win that terminal serve battle. Can we be better at killing the first ball? We can win, and stopping our opponent, we can win that first ball battle. And then can we dig more balls and kill it in transition? We can win that transition battle. So that's where this idea of the triangle comes from. And there's a couple things that I talk about. I have some strategy stuff that we can dive into, but because I also want to make sure that we're talking about some question stuff. The first thing I want to hit is some drills, a few good drills. Okay, we have a few, the Marines need a few good men. As volleyball coaches, we need a few good drills. Okay, so here's a few 6-on-6 drills that I like. And I want to show why the scoring system is the way it is.
Joe, I'm going to interrupt really quick because I forgot to mention, if anybody on the webinar wants to ask a question, just type it in. There's a little thing to your right that allows you to ask a question, and I will try to get to any and all of them as I can. So sorry to interrupt you, Joe. Go ahead.
No, yes, please. The goal of this initial presentation is to stimulate some conversation and prompt some questions. So hopefully this isn't me talking at you guys for an hour, but hopefully this is me talking at you guys for a little bit, which will prompt some questions. So I want to show you guys how I use some of this information to make drills and make games. So one of my favorite 6-on-6 games is ace ball. It's one of these things that I think is incredibly simple, but pretty powerful. So I like things that are simple but powerful. So the gist of ace ball is you just play volleyball, but you only get a point when you serve an ace. It's kind of like an extreme version of old school scoring, right? Old school scoring, only the serving team could get a point, and you were just siding out to try to get the serve to score a point. Well, in ace ball, only the serving team can score a point, but it has to be an ace. So it's pretty tough, right? It's pretty tough. Well, it's tough at some levels. At other levels, it's not as tough. Okay. And there's kind of 2 ways you can do it. The easiest way is kind of the 2-way variation where it's going to go back and forth. You can rotate it, but the way that I like is you just pick a rotation on both sides of the net. Both teams going to stay in those rotations. So the same servers, and you put 3 to 5 minutes on the clock, and they're just going back and forth. Okay. So you're trying to side out so that your server can go back there and serve. And If the server doesn't serve an ace, you're trying to still win the rally to get it back to them so they can serve an ace. So that's a good one. And then another variation, and that's simple, that doesn't require really any statistical knowledge other than the fact that, hey, we want to win this ace ball game. It's kind of this little separate beast in and of itself. Obviously, if you're missing a ton of serves, then you're not serving aces because you're giving the ball right away to your other team. So a two-way version is good. And then sometimes I really like this one-way variation. So in this case, you're going to put one team to stay on receive for the whole round. And often that might be like your starting lineup or some of that combination, especially if you have club, if you don't even have 12 players, like if you have 11, 10, you can have 5 versus 6 or 4 versus 6. You put the 6 on the receiving side, so it can be like an actual rotation. You can go around. So you must rotate all the way around before allowing some amount of aces. So if you rotate all the way around, that's 6 side outs, right? You got to get all the way around, one in each rotation. Every time you side out, you rotate. If the serving team wins the rally, but it's not an ace, then it's a wash. Neither team gets a point because the serving team's got to get an ace to get a point. And 23 to 19, meaning the receiving team's got to get all the way around, side out in all 6 rotations. So they started with 19. I'm saying the serving team first. Serving team's got 23, receiving team's got 19. So receiving team's got to earn 6 side outs to get to 25 before they allow 2 aces. And that's indicative of a pretty solid level of play. So if you were like a good collegiate team, that would be a little easy for you because they're even better at preventing aces. If you're an average high school age team, you'll struggle with that. Because on average, teams give up a few more aces than that. But that's also a reason to play it because now we got to keep the ball in play, even if it's not a good pass. Can't allow an ace. So 23-19 is a good scoring system for a lot of even up to very good club high school teams. Some teams are going to need to play 22-19, so 6 side outs before you allow 3 aces, okay, in order to make it fair. And then some teams, for example, instead of 23-19 needing 6 side outs, maybe you go 23-18. You need 7 side outs. And of course, what rotation do I like to do it? I like to start in our worst rotation. So now you got to start and you got to get that worst rotation twice. So just little things like that. That's how I like to tweak drills. And you're kind of using stats to inform you here. But what you're doing is, okay, if you keep any of these statistics, then you're saying, okay, what matters is, can that affect what drill that we do? Because this ace ball is going to focus on winning that terminal serve battle. Now, come back to, well, I'll talk about make them play right now. This is kind of a similar idea. It incorporates the idea of ace ball, but now the serving team gets a point if they serve an ace, or if the receiving team makes an unforced error. That could be a setting error, like they let the ball drop. That could be hitting in the net, hitting out the back. Getting blocked still counts as making them play. So even if you get blocked, that's kind of the minimum. You didn't win the point, but you did make them play. So when I do that, I usually go 21-19. So 6 side outs before you give away 4 points. So this I call this make them play. And it's pretty obvious, right? You can't give away points. Coaches always talk about that. But how many of our teams give away points, right? It's when, a 5 to 6 point run often wins a set, especially in high school volleyball, high school aged volleyball, 16 and under, something like that. 12 and under, both teams are probably going to get a couple 5-point runs. That's the nature of 12 and unders. But in 16 and under volleyball, if you get a 5 or 6 point run, you usually win that set. And how do 6-point runs usually happen? Is it because the other team just dug you and then got a transition kill 6 straight times? That might happen every now and then, but usually not. Usually it's because you gave up an ace, then you made a hitting error, then you gave up another ace, then they dug you one time, then you gave them a free ball, and then you allowed another ace. Right? So it's like they barely had to do anything in order to earn those 6 points. So what we want to do is train our team to make them play. Know when it's a chance to be aggressive, swing for the kill. Know when to just keep that ball in play. Another 6-point variation, another 6-on-6 variation I like. Now this is thinking a little bit more about that first ball game. Call this good pass side out. So now this is again a similar variation. You only get a point. You have to be a good pass, and then you have to win the rally. Okay, so now this is less focused on the terminal serving, which is more about serving in, serving aces, preventing aces. This is going to be more about the first ball because we got to pass well. So it's less about preventing ace, more about passing accurately. And then a similar variation that I'll go over is first ball kill. So now again, similar, you're just playing volleyball, but the receiving team only gets a point when they get a first ball kill. So they have to pass up the first ball to serve receive, kill the first ball. And you can see how the scoring system now, the serving team has the advantage. So they need to start with fewer points than the receiving team. Because the rate of first ball kill, you don't even do that half the time. If you can first ball kill 1 out of 3 balls in high school or club volleyball, that's pretty good. Okay, so now the receiving team needs to have more points. Right, and the gist with all this stuff is we want to have a lens that we can take stats if you can, but even if you don't have an advanced stat program or anything like that, and we just kind of think of the concept of it, this is how I like to view the game. It's kind of this best of 3 series, each match. Yeah, it's a best of 3 to 25, but it's also a best of 3 in these 3 phases of the game. We got terminal serving, we got the first ball, we got the transition. And then when I look at the strengths and weaknesses of my team, as I train them in practice, are we hitting, first of all, are we hitting each of those 3 areas with some focus, with a drill? If not every practice, most practices, or over a series of practices, do I have practice or 2 that emphasizes the terminal serving? Do I have a practice or 2 that emphasizes the first ball element? Do I have a practice or 2 that emphasizes the transition? So sometimes you can try to hit each one every practice, like you do a few more drills, but they're a little shorter, and you hit each element in every practice. Or you take it more like, okay, this practice we're going to hit this one more. The next practice we're going to have this overall emphasis. So there's a few ways to do it. And part of the reason that I started with this is to prompt some conversation and some questions. Eric, I know you had some pre-planned questions, but hopefully we're also getting some stuff in from the chat, and then we can use this as a jumping off point.
Yeah. So I want to tell you, first of all, that I've been using the triangle for a couple of years now. Last year I had a 16s team, a young 16s team, and we were very strong in serving and very strong in transition, but terrible in first ball. And so, like you said, just the intention of every day in practice, let's get better at this skill, let's get better. But the other thing I will tell everybody is that it's a very easy way to keep stats because there's just a natural flow, right? You're watching the match, and if the point isn't decided on the serve, then it goes to the first ball kill, and if it's not decided on first ball kill, it stumbles down to transition. So it's a really, really easy way to keep stats. And then when you're done with not just your match, but maybe your day, and you start adding them all up, you really start seeing some trends. And so that's why I really, really enjoyed this a lot. I've shared it in some of the countries I've been lucky enough to go to, and they enjoy the simplicity of it as well. And it really does, it paints a picture and gives you an intention for practice, for that next week.
Yeah, and one thing, like for example, if you are coaching club, a lot of you guys might have an assistant coach, but sometimes you're going to a club tournament and you're the only coach there, or you might have an assistant coach. But you really, I don't like, if you're I think you have to coach at the tournament. You can't make sure you turn yourself into a full-time stat keeper. And I'm happy to pass this along. You probably already have it, Eric, but if you need to, I can pass it along. I have just basic, I call it a terminal contact sheet, because in order to keep this, all you have to do is make one mark. That's however the play ended.
Right.
So that's something that you can keep on your clipboard or in your notebook, and you can coach and coach and coach just as you normally would. You don't have to be recording everything throughout the whole rally. You can just coach, and all you have to do is just make one little mark, or you can have an assistant coach, whatever. And or therefore, it's not, the assistant coach doesn't have to spend the whole time taking stats. You just make one mark. You just make one mark, however the rally ended for you or for them, and then you tally up the marks. So I find it an effective way. Obviously, when we coach pro collegiate, you may have a full-time dedicated statistician. You can have these advanced analytics. Okay, this is kind of my bang for the buck. If for like club coaches, you got to wear every hat, and you can't be a full-time statistician. Okay, you can get some pretty good data just by making one mark each play.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about make them play, and I think that's an important distinction, especially for younger coaches. But I saw recently that there was, for example, a make them play stat where at the higher levels, maybe 80% is a good number. Maybe at high school and decent club, it's like 67%. And a friend of ours, John Mayer, wanted to know what's the best way to improve the make them play stats in practice, or in a drill. What's the best way to improve that?
Right. Yep. My mutual friend John Mayer, coach of the Loyola Marymount Beach team. I've known John for a long time, and I've kind of been consulting with the LMU beach team over the years. So I help them put together their stats and analysis after each weekend of play, and then I always go down to Gulf Shores to nationals with them and help them with that, help them with some scouting. And it's kind of funny because okay, all right, the number one thing. So the college beach is a pretty interesting format because there's a lot of volleyball going on over a weekend, right? You have five, really six, only five pairs get scored, but the sixth pair still plays most of the time on most, dual matches. When you play 3 or 4 of those in a weekend. So if you think about how many matches that is, right? 24 matches over the course of a weekend. So there's a lot to compile. And I help put all that together, and then they kind of meet with the players on each pair and say, okay, here's how you did this weekend. Here's some information, and we can use that to practice this weekend. And one of the main things, probably the number one thing that each player is always going to see, is this make them play. What's your make them play stat? And it's this critical statistic. It's really helped LMU be, not that the stat helps, but just the idea, this concept of make them play. And what it is, all of this is when they serve the ball into you, you got to get the ball back over the net. And it's like, what is more basic than that? There's nothing more than that. And but the deal is, a lot of things in volleyball are things that make you successful. Everybody agrees that they're important, but some people just mean it a little bit more. So if you really take that idea to heart, it means you don't give your team, the opponent, free points. And now, of course, who wants to give your opponent free points? Nobody. But now you really have to start doing a couple things. So first of all, there's this idea about ace prevention. And I think when we look at, and this is something that's been increasingly important to me over the last, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, is I'm always trying to look at, is the attention of me as a coach, is that matching up with the influence on the game? So what I mean by that is, if I spend a lot of my focus and time and attention as a coach, and therefore asking my players to have that same amount of attention, that should have a lot of impact on the game. And if I'm spending not as much time, it should have less impact on the game. Okay, we're prioritizing. And I think if we look at passing, imagine there's 2 qualities to a good passer. So a really good passer would rarely get aced, and they would pass the ball accurately, right? So they don't shank the ball or miss the ball completely. And then when they do pass the ball, it's accurate. And these are related skills, right? Generally speaking, we see really good passers who pass a high percentage of program passes tend to have low getting aced, vice versa. But it's not 100%. It's not 100% correlated. So there can be teams, you might have a team that's in the top, say if we're using the NCAA, they're in the top 5 or 10 in the country in not getting aced, but they're only above average at passing in system. Or this team might be top 5 or 10 in the country passing in system, but they're only above average in preventing aces. So you can be relatively better at one or the other. And it is actually it correlates more to winning ace prevention. They're both correlated to winning, but ace prevention actually correlates a little higher. So, well, that's important. It's good to know. But now let's think about where a typical coaching emphasis is on. And if your coaches here listening, if they're like me, I would say that more attention, or more like me before I started really thinking about this, I've changed a little bit since then. Um, most of my coaching attention when it came to passing was, okay, get this angle a little bit more so that ball doesn't go 12 feet off the net, it goes 7 feet off the net. Okay, angle it a little more left so it can be a little bit more in system, angle it a little more right, direct it here a little higher, a little lower. Okay, like that kind of stuff, like fine tuning the accuracy, trying to go from like a medium pass to an in system pass. And of course, there's always some emphasis on, okay, we got to be good in this seam, or we got to be ready. But since then, I've tried to almost flip my attention, and I've tried to say the most attention I'm going to have on passing is about things that prevent aces. So now I'm going to start by really, really always emphasizing, how are we handling the seams? How are we handling the in-between balls? Do we have a plan to pass balls that are going very deep, that are dropping short, that are crossing seams, so going left to right or right to left? How are we handling balls that hit off the tape? Because a lot of coaches, I think, especially in club volleyball, hey, ball hits the tape, trickles over, bad luck. But actually, there are teams that know how to handle those tape balls and pick them up. Some of them are tough, and you may get aced. But can we shave off a few of those? You know, so the number one is just having some language around ace prevention. And then I think it's also, there's kind of sometimes this split-second decision where as you start to see that serve as a passer, okay, it's a pretty medium speed to easy ball. I'm tracking it well. Okay, I'm going to come and make this in system pass. Sometimes that serve is coming at you, and then you have to just immediately flip to just play defense. Just get something on it. Keep that ball in play. Don't let it get by. Don't let it drop. If it's a dropping serve, sprawl out. Don't let it hit. Doesn't need to be perfect. Hey, even if you overpass the ball, we're still in play. But you can't let that ball drop. You can't pass it under the net. Is it a deep driving serve? Okay, you can't let it skip past you. You got to really angle over. Just some of those kind of things. So that's on the ace prevention. And then the other part of make them play is not making unforced hitting errors. So for me, the number one byline of this is, we want to hit the ball out of bounds more than we hit it in the net. And we want to get blocked more than we hit it out of bounds. So one of the best ways to make them play is to make them block. Get blocked. Go get blocked. Be nice if we didn't get stuff blocked. But remember that when we attack the other team's block, the majority of the time it's not stuff blocked. Maybe they get a good block touch and they dig it. Maybe they get a bad block, a soft block touch, and it comes back on our side and we can cover it. Great. Maybe they get a bad block touch and they get the ball up, but they give us a free ball back. Or maybe they get such a bad block touch that it's a tool, direct point for us. And sometimes they're going to stuff block us. But generally speaking, attacking the ball into opponent block has a positive efficiency at like all levels of volleyball. And in club volleyball, definitely so. Typical high school aged club blocker is going to get tooled 4 times for every time they stuff a ball. That's very common. That's about typical high school. Even good blockers in high school and club volleyball are getting told twice for every time that they block a ball. It's very typical.
Hmm.
So attack the block. Don't make them block you. So that, to me, that's on the hitting end. The number one thing. Sorry, the number one thing that we can do to make them play from the attacking side is go get blocked. Go make them block us.
Gotcha. So it's a pretty, like I said, the numbers I saw were pretty stacked. That this is one of the most important things out there. And like you said, working with Mayor at LMU, and on the beach side, that's obviously I mean, guy got to the finals last year and lost 17-15 in the last match. So obviously it's made a big imprint on him.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, you look at make them play statistics, it correlates well with winning. Like I said, on the indoor side, NCAA team, if you're making them play below 80%, you're having a tough time winning. Or a tough time like being at the top of your conference. If you're over 80%, that's good. You're low error, because you can kind of almost chop it up. Like the rate of getting aced is going to be similar to the rate of making unforced hitting errors. Like it tends, like, so if you think about, if we make them play at 80%, then we're like 10% getting aced, 10% enforced errors. Like not that it always works out with the way, but it's like it's not a bad way to think about it if you're trying to visualize that. So that means like if they serve in 10 times, then we're giving them 2 free points. Or if they serve in 20 times, we're giving them 4 free points. If they serve in 25 times, like a very close set of volleyball, close 25-point set of volleyball, say it goes into bonus points, they're going to serve in 20 times, between 20 and 25 points. So are we only giving them 4 or 5 freebies? That's what you need to do at the NCAA level. At high school level, obviously it's lower. And yeah, a lot of high school teams, 67 is not necessarily good, but it's what a lot of high school age teams will be at. And a lot of high school age volleyball is played below 67%. They can play. I say 67 because it's 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3.
So you can think about that. If they serve 24 balls in, and we give them a free ball 1 out of every 3rd time, that's we're giving them 8 points in a 25-point set. That's a lot. That starts to be a lot. And probably some of us listening right now are like, yeah, we've coached plenty of 25-point sets where we gave the other team that many balls. I'm just talking about right out of serve receive. And the way that I think about it is, when I graduated college, my first year out of college, came back, I was coaching club, and I coached also the high school boys team at the school that I went to, at the high school that I went to. And it was kind of one of those high school boys teams that you didn't have enough for a full varsity in a JV. We had like 18 boys. So we had like a few that were like core varsity players, and then a few that only ever played JV. And then there was like a little bit of mixing. So we kind of practiced all together on 2 nets. And sometimes at the beginning of the season, what I would do is have six of the JV boys over on serve receive on 1 net. And I would just say, okay, I'm just going to serve in just a medium speed ball, and you got to get the ball. And then there's nobody on defense. If you can't give a free ball, you can't set it over, and you can't tip it over. So all you got to do is be able to hit the ball over the net and in the court.
Yeah.
And they would lose. And they would lose. And I'm like, you're losing to nobody right now. We're literally losing to nobody. All the other team had to do was serve the ball over the net and sit down, and you lost. Now, I'm not saying that to like shame them, but just to realize, and again, this is very typical, hey, JV boys, who maybe a lot of them is their first year playing, they haven't played club, maybe they played 1 season of volleyball before. So the ball control is very low. But then also the amount of solutions that they had as attackers, they had 2 solutions. They had hit the ball as hard as you possibly can and free ball. That's all. They had nothing in between. And the ability to make your opponent play, you got to have solutions in between those 2. You got to have medium speed shot. You got to have some rollers. You got to have, you do want to have some tipping options, but in this game, I took the tipping options away. So, you got to setters and non-setters alike have to be able to set balls that aren't just perfect passes. They have to get sets and swings out of all these situations. And of course, as the season went over, eventually they could beat nobody. They started being able to make the other team play a little bit. But that's a stat that I really like, and that's a pretty good one for club coaches to keep an eye on, is when the other team serves the ball in 10 times, how often are we making the other team have to play? And sometimes they even, again, for drill purposes, it's also pretty good. I glossed over it a little bit. I'm happy to share either right now or via follow-up. We can send a follow-up email or whatever with some of the scoring system. I like all of these things that can be used as scoring system, because 80% is a little tough. I mean, a high school team can definitely do it in a short burst, but sometimes I would use 75%. And I like these numbers because they're human scale. 75% is 3 out of 4 or 6 out of 8. So you can set up little rotation mini games. Hey, stay in this rotation, and you got to, if you, at any point, if you give up 2 errors in the span of 4 points, or you give up 3 in the span of 8, automatic loss. Okay, so it's like you have to, and I think generally speaking, that's how we teach our team to play at a high level, is we start by playing at a high level for short bursts of time. And we learn to play at that level longer.
Gotcha. And you're talking about, in a way, constraints. And so that kind of leads me into my next question here. There's always a coaching civil war going on, it seems like. And we've got the one side that is, the quote unquote older style information processing method of coaching. And then this new style, ecological dynamics, which is, come in with the constraints led approach. And I think if you're a coach on this webinar, probably what we're talking about here. But I've heard you talk about both in good sense, some negatives about both. But where you stand today, where are you at today in between that? Have you picked a side, or are you seeing tools in both that you can use? Where are you at?
Yeah, I think the side that I pick ends up annoying people in the camp or something like that, because I don't like to start with the theory. I don't like to start with the theory. I like to start with the methods and the practice. And I guess what I would say is, if I have something that I'm pretty sure has been working, I never throw it away because it doesn't seem to match up with the theory. I try to have the theory help guide me to come up with new methods when I need them. So I guess what that means is, hey, here's a drill that I've been doing for a while. Whatever, drill X. I've been doing this for a while, and I'm pretty sure it's been helping my team. Do I have a double-blind placebo study that shows that? No, because you can't do that kind of stuff. It's your own team, all that. But I'm an observant coach. I coach these kids. I got a feel for them. You can make a reasonable inform that this has been helping. If that doesn't align with some theory that I'm reading about, when I say theory, I'm not trying to be too hard. I'm not saying theory in the colloquial sense, like something unproven. I'm saying theory in the scientific meaning, like here's this body of research that supports an approach to viewing the world. So if it doesn't seem to match up with it, I just say, okay, maybe I just don't know the science well enough to know why this seems to be helping, but it does seem to be helping. And I'm gonna keep it in there. And if there's something that is missing, we're trying to train this aspect of surveying, and my kids don't seem to be getting it. I've tried these couple of drills that I've been using for years, and this doesn't seem to be helping. That's when I do go to the theory and I say, okay, well, hey, informational processing says this, or ecological dynamics says these factors. What's missing here in what I'm doing in practice? What's not working? That's how I tend to look at things. I don't know. So there are coaches that are invested in one side or the other. that are listening to me say that and say, well, like that's a cop out, or you actually are using one of these lenses and you just don't know it, or uh, and that's okay. If that's how they are going to think or something like that. And I do like the theoretical debate or the scientific debate. Something that I'm always very cognizant of is this is psychological research, right? So motor learning is a field of psychology, and it's hard to do research on. I'm not saying that doesn't mean that anything that all this research is invalid, because there's some pretty replicable findings. Something like external focus of control, or sorry, external focus of attention.
Mhm.
That's pretty well replicated. Meaning, if I'm going back to serve at game point, I don't want to be thinking about my hand. I want to be thinking about where I want the ball to go. That's pretty well replicated, and it also seems to match with people's practical application. So feel like pretty comfortable about that. But there's also some other, sometimes there can be statements made, and the research that supports it is not, the research is not, oh, this was how drills were run for an extended season of an athlete's multi-year development, right? Those are really, really impossible studies to do in psychological research. You can't have the control group opposed to that. You can do all these control experiments where there's a few practices being run a certain way and stuff like that. But you just can't run control groups in some of these studies for months and years. So I try to keep that in mind. I try to keep that in mind with everything that has to do with psychological research, and whether this is like motor learning, or I mean, this is something that the field of social science and the replicability crisis has been going through.
Mhm.
Sometimes some of these things um, don't always replicate outside the lab, or they don't replicate in exactly the same way. So I think I try to use it as a source of information. I try to use it as um, a devil's advocate to what I might be doing. Hey, if there's a coach that was really knowledgeable, Carl McGowan was one of my coaching
Mhm.
mentors, and he was a motor learning professor. He came from the informational processing school. So if I'm setting up a practice, I was like, oh, what would Carl say about this? How would he tear this practice apart? What weaknesses would he find? And same thing on the ecological. And hey, Rob Gray. How would Rob Gray look at this practice? What would he say? What would he think I'm screwing up? Because I kind of look at that when, especially like, hey, now I'm involved in club volleyball again. Who here has run a perfect club volleyball practice? You got 2 hours. You got probably just yourself, maybe yourself and another coach. You don't have enough time. You don't have enough equipment. You got your drill set up, and then there's traffic on the highway, and 3 of your kids are 4 minutes late. Okay, nobody's ever run a perfect club volleyball practice. And that is the risk, is if you start trying to make it perfect, sometimes you can get analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
So the way that I always try to look at it is, okay, like what have I been doing? And then again, like what are the flaws in it? And then what's the easiest upgrade for me to make? It's kind of how I view coaching player. Okay, here's this 15-year-old kid. There's 37 things that they do poorly on the volleyball court. Of course. What's the easiest upgrade to make? What's the highest return for the smallest investment that can get them better as a player? That's what I'm looking for for my coaching. Here's this practice. Okay, here's the practice I ran last week. What is the highest return? What's one thing I can tweak about it? That's the highest return for the minimal, easiest change.
Yeah. It makes sense, and I think sometimes, like you said, we take the theory and try to plug everything into it, where we should be looking at the athletes, I think, and try to figure out what works best for them using the theories that we have. So I think that's where we might get lost a little bit. So we are tonight, or tomorrow night starts the round of 16 for the 2025 NCAA women's volleyball championships. What trends? You're really good with your blog Smarter Volley about tracking trends and things that you see. And I had a coach this weekend tell me that they saw this season a lot more outside hitters using the push and the dump and the going off hands, and so just getting a little friskier on the outsides a little bit. Have you seen any trends that that is at the collegiate level for the women?
Every trend I always see is a little later than real time because I watch very few I watch very little volleyball live. I tend to watch the major, whatever, but
Mhm.
I always a lot of times I like to be able to have a day or like an extended period of time to sit down. And then I say, okay, pull up my volley metrics, which is why I watch most of the stuff, right? The scout angle from the end line that I watch it after the fact. Um, so what I'm interested to look at, one of the things that I'm interested to look at actually is how teams are playing offense in the two-hitter rotations when the setter's front row. So well, first of all, we've seen over the last few years a semi-resurgence in the 6-2, a little more frequent on some decent teams. But then also teams trying to find some solutions in the two-hitter rotations. Something I posted about after last NCAA tournament was when you adjusted for the quality of pass, slide was the least efficient offensive pattern. Meaning on average, a good pass, perfect pass sides out at this rate, good pass sides out at this rate, et cetera, et cetera. So not that good. So good slide hitters were efficient. There was a lot of inefficient slide hitters in the tournament. And I think coaches know that. Hey, if you can get two great slide hitters, well, that'd be nice. But not every team can, not even very few teams can have two very efficient slide hitters. So then teams are trying to find other solutions. Teams are trying, okay, do we keep them in front? Then what do we do out of the back row? What do we do to deal with the fact that we have two hitters in front, nobody behind? Do we have a D ball? Do we have some other back row options? Are setters getting active in certain ways? So I'm kind of curious to see when all's said and done at the end of the tournament, what those numbers looked like again, and what solutions worked. What solutions worked for earning side outs in those two hitter rows. And sometimes it just comes down to your outside hitter just needs to be really good. Your next two outside just needs to be really good because they're going to hit against a double block a bunch of times and they just need to power through, which then goes to some of the solutions that you talked about, to deal with the block.
Yeah. What about trends in the junior level? Like, what do you say now that your Club W out of Wilmington, North Carolina, you've got a 16s team. I don't know. I don't think we're really thick into the tournament season yet, but have you seen some trends in the junior level that you can maybe, I don't know, scout and figure out how to get around?
So I coached, so after coming back from coaching in Korea, last year I moved into the area and I coached a 17 and under team just at a club in the area. And that was a lot of fun. That was my first full year, club. Actually, kind of during the COVID year, when some professional stuff was off, I helped out a little bit or a lot that club season with me from my parents' club. So it was like kind of like a full year, but it was also like the weird COVID year where things were getting canceled and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So this year was like kind of my first start to finish full club season in like 15 years. So that was pretty fun actually. I was actually really surprised. Maybe not surprised by how much I liked it, but I was surprised at how impactful the coaching was. Actually, one of the biggest reasons why we're sticking with club volleyball. You get these kids for a long time. This is kind of a side note, but I think people would be surprised that at like national team and club or national team pro team, sometimes how little practice time you have a lot of practice time in a way, but because of the demands of the competitive schedule, sometimes it just seems like you don't have enough time or anything like that. So I having a full club season was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And I have to say, one of the things that I don't know if this is like an old timers thing to say now I'm getting old, was I was shocked at how similar it felt like to coaching club volleyball in 2008.
Really?
Really similar. Not that you wouldn't see anything different from time to time, but I think volleyball it's a little more of a game of micro trends and it's a little more cyclical than I think, you know. I guess one thing I say it kind of like this is people have been swing blocking for a long time. You know, I can remember 2008, 9, 10, 11, training high school girls to swing block was kind of a controversial thing. Should you swing block? Should you yeah, this or that? Is that for men's game? Is that not? And so I guess I'm talking about something that was different, but I think the concept behind it is the same. Um, Nowadays, when I do maybe clinics in club or work coaching clinics, stuff like that, I'm surprised at how many kids don't know how to shuffle block. And a good blocking system, you need to do both. Like there's times when swing blocking has some pros and cons, and times when shuffle blocking, has the right mix of pros and cons for the situation. And of course, it's not that swing blocking is new, and it's not that shuffle blocking is new. It's more just kids in a certain area may get used to playing a certain way, or vice versa. Um, and then I think when you just travel around the country, okay, we're playing 17 Open, we're traveling qualifiers and stuff like that last year, and hey, you see good teams doing a variety of different things. I think the kind of the hallmark of club volleyball kid is they just haven't been playing volleyball for that long. Even if they started pretty young, volleyball below a certain level is a lot like there's kind of a couple levels to it. The first level is like you're just trying to beat gravity. You're just trying to keep the ball up in the air. And then the next level that most kids spend most of their career, and for some it's their whole volleyball career, they never really get past this, is both teams are just playing against the net. Can you serve over? Can you hit over more than the other team? Um, and then there's a certain level where both teams can beat the net, can get above the net, can hit hard, can play. And most of volleyball kids, because they don't have that much experience in that level of play, and there's always going to be a ton of gaps in their knowledge. So I think sometimes as coaches, we look at, oh, here's this trend, or here's this, or here's that. Your average kid that you're coaching has like no idea about any of these trends or any of that. They know what they've done in the couple of years of like really good competitive volleyball that they've even played. And there's so many gaps in their knowledge to fill in that I think a lot of it is about not assuming, you know, just, oh, this is interesting right now to us as coaches. But like, I would bet that your players have 27 fundamental gaps before you even start getting these nuances sometimes.
Yeah. One of our attendees, Romero, is asking, what's your best advice for U12s learning to serve?
So a couple things I think are important in this. The number one is you have to have a practice setup that allows an appropriate amount of success. The most important thing when you're doing any skill is the intrinsic feedback that you get. So your instruction from the coach is important, all that stuff, that is important. But a little kid can learn to turn on a light switch before they can even speak, because you flip the light, it turns on. You flip the light down, it turns off. The effect is very immediate. It's very predictable. Okay. Nothing in sports can be that predictable. But the net is a really nice, clear feedback. It's actually part of the reason why young kids can become proficient servers before any other skill. People say it's because serving is a closed loop skill. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's because the net, when you serve, provides such clear feedback. And in fact, I think this is also why many kids stagnate in their serving. So many kids improve rapidly in their serving until they get to the point where they're very consistent overhand servers. And then vast majority of volleyball players, sometimes this happens somewhere between 8th grade and 10th or 11th grade for a lot of kids. And then for most of them, they're serving plateaus because it's harder to get the feedback. This serve went over and in. This serve went over and in. Now, one of those serves was better than the other. One of the serves was was hit harder or it was flatter, had less spin, something like that. But I got to pay a little more attention to get those details. Okay. Some kids do. Some kids are guided that way by their coaches, but not everybody does. Okay. So come back to the 12 and under. Again, we have this great net. Serving the ball over the net is such a great thing for every kid who's learning how to overhand serve. Now, the problem is if it's too difficult for me and I don't get any serves over, now I lose that feedback. So I need that feedback to be somewhat difficult in order to give me a feedback when I hit a good serve. But if it's so difficult that all of my serves go in the net or under the net, now I cannot differentiate between my best serve that was like hit pretty well, hit pretty solidly, went in the net, in the middle of the net. And if I had been standing at 22 feet, would have gone over. And some crappy serve. Yeah, you feel it a little bit in how it hits your hand. So what I mean by this is, say we just have one kid. Let's imagine a very simple practice. You're just giving a lesson to one kid. You got to serve from an area where they're going to get half or more of the serves in. If that means moving all the way up to the 10-foot line, great. Okay, if that means standing at 15 feet, 20 feet, 25 feet, whatever it is, finding a zone where there's half or more serves going over the net, that allows feedback to happen. Now, this is tricky because now we have a whole team. It's going to be different for different kids. Some kids will be able to serve from the end line. Some kids got to move way up. But the principle that you want to think about is having that net as appropriate feedback. So utilizing the light ball and a heavier ball as appropriate for, the not like a heavy setter, like heavy ball, but just like the normal volleyball, and the volley lights as appropriate, and allowing appropriate amount of step in. Now we're going to do a lot of practice, like we can do some individual practice where everybody's just serving. Okay, that's really easy to individualize. You can go into some doubles. Okay, if you're doing like a split court doubles type game, something like that. Monitor your individual kids. Make sure they're serving, kind of adjust them. If they're stronger and they can go over from the end line, go over from the end line. If they're a little weaker, move them up in that. And then same thing for 6-on-6. So that's the number one thing, is serving from the appropriate distance. Now, in terms of some serving keys, again, you phrase this as 12 and under. So I'm taking this not from, hey, I have a 12 and under team that can all serve in at 90%, and we're trying to upgrade our serve. That would be the same answer for high school kids. You hit the ball flat, you hit it with no spin, you hit it in space between passes. I don't think that's what you're asking. So the question that I answer is 12 and under kids that are trying to get some overhand serves over ever for the first time in life. Okay, they have to serve the ball. We know from physics. Okay, again, so sorry to backtrack. If we're coaching collegiate servers, we don't want them to serve the ball up. If we're coaching good high school kids, we don't want them to serve the ball up. We want them to serve the ball flat and low over the net, because they are strong enough to serve the ball out the back. So now they need to keep it down. They need to make it tougher. Our 12 and under kids, we're just trying to get the ball over the net. They need to go up. We know from physics, the maximum distance of a projectile is at a launch angle of 45 degrees. The ball needs to go up in order to have its maximum distance. So serving keys, like imagine the corner of the gym, like if you're at a typical gym, your court, there will be a wall either behind the court or in the distance behind the court. There will probably be some visual reference, like where the wall and the ceiling meet. Okay, imagine that corner right there. I want you to serve and high five it to that corner. So they're finishing up a little, they're serving up a little bit. They're hitting this part of the hand, not this part of the hand. Okay. Controversial opinion. If a kid is this close to overhand serving, they're really close, maybe they can't quite get it, I don't mind them even hitting with a fist to get it up and just over the net. They won't do it forever because it won't help them. It's harder to serve it hard, flat, and clean with like this. But if it's the strengthens up their hand a little bit, I'm okay with that. Generally speaking, they need to probably take less steps. A lot of times kids take too many steps and they lose power. What I like them to do is stand still with your weight on the right foot, toss it, and then step. Even just one step, they have it more powerful. Whereas a lot of those kids, they start moving and then their toss goes behind them. or straight up, and then they lose the power. So those are my top 12 and under tips.
So in other words, keep it simple, but I'm going to extend this just for Romero real quick. If you have a kid who is able to hit the ball over the net at 20 feet, 22 feet, 23 feet, but that's their limit. And in a game, are you okay teaching them underhand or a roundhouse serve or something like what I guess what we would call a game serve while they're working on their overhand serve, so that they're not going to go up and just miss every serve and feel bad about themselves?
If you have never gotten an overhand serve over ever in practice, then we have you underhand in the game. And in particular, yeah, I like the sidearm. You
Right.
just hold it here, you hit it sidearm. That is fine. That's a good solution. They don't want to do it the whole season, especially if they got a couple other kids on the team who are serving overhand. So yeah, you explain that all. Just give them a little bit of pointers. They practice a little bit in practice. Majority of their practice is still going to be overhand. You teach them a way that they can still get it over in the game, because also the other team wants to play volleyball. It's not even good sportsmanship for the other team to send a kid back there. You know for sure it's going to be a service error. We're just wasting everybody's time.
Yeah.
Get it over. Let the other team play some volleyball too, and then go from there.
Actually leads into one of my other things that I wanted to talk to you about. I've used this and it's been successful, and actually talking about what we're talking about now would not be the worst idea, but the Goldilocks method is something that I first read about in your blog a few years ago, and I really, really liked it. I've used it. It's been successful, and I want to share it with the coaches that are on with us today.
Yep. So Goldilocks, right? Goldilocks and the three bears. You know, there's whatever, the porridge is too hot. This porridge is too cold. This one's just right. And something, you know, I actually just recently read, I like the way that this author phrased it. It was talking about, you know, it was more of an educational context, but it's talking about teaching. So we're talking about teaching volleyball. And it was boundaries matter more than definitions. And see, it really seems like our body, our brain learns well from boundaries, kind of feeling the edges to find the golden middle. So this is what the Goldilocks method is. It's basically like you're going to do a set of 3 of volleyball action. And the first one you're going to make too hot. The second one you're going to make too cold. Third one you're going to make just right. So for example, let's say this is not necessarily what I would do for a 12 and under server, but like a high school kid who like can overhand serve, right? Like they have a reasonably decent idea of how to serve over, and they can serve the ball in the court and stuff like that. Okay. But what we're going to try to do is figure out how to serve it the right trajectory. So if we hit it too low, we're going to serve it in the net. But if we hit it high and loopy, that's too easy. Okay. So we're going to first one too hot. You are going to bullet this ball low, and your goal is to serve it in the tape. If you serve it in the net, it's okay. If you accidentally serve it over the net and in, it's not the end of the world. But like you're aiming for the tape. And the next one, you're going to put some loop on it. You're aiming for over the top of the antenna. And now the third one, hit it just right. Nice, flat, low, not in the tape, but not loopy, nice and flat. And ideally, you do a few rounds of that 3. Too hot in the tape, too low, loopy. Third one just right. Too hot, too cold, just right. Too hot, too cold, just right. And that's an example of serving. You can do this for passing. Sometimes for passers trying to find a passing posture, I have to say, kind of like be really super like low. And the next one be like super straight up. The third one, find like a good balance. Like you're not totally straight up, but you're not like so low that you can't move. So for setters, okay, set 3 balls. Set 1 that shoots out a little wide. Set second one that dies a little inside. Third one just right. So it's just this principle that by feeling the boundaries, you can actually have a better sense for that golden middle. This is really good for kind of tutoring activities, more single contact drills, not necessarily what I would do in a sixes kind of competitive drill.
Yeah. Another one of your blogs that I read and I really enjoyed, and it was kind of an eye-opening one, was kids shuffling back in serve receive. And you know, we're always talking about as coaches, you know, I get, you know, shuffle to the line, shuffle to the line, shuffle to the line, and you really had a nice take on that. It was different Hopefully you can share that with us.
Are you referring to let them serve out?
Yes.
Or, yeah. Yeah. So again, I guess this is one of these coaching things. I can remember being coached in high school. Hey, follow the ball to the line, follow it so you know it's out. And I provided that one. And again, to follow up with a link in a post email or something like this, I showed montages of NCAA tournament, men's, women's, Olympic men's, Olympic women's. These balls are going out. You don't see any of these passers follow the ball to the line. Watch it when you see this coming into the NCAA tournament. You will see very few of these deep serves where a server follows the ball to the line. Almost never. Sometimes if it's a little loopy, you might like, especially like a free ball that's high and loopy, passers will track that to judge it a little bit. But when it's flat and hard, you don't have time. And I think when we talk to our players about following the ball to the line, what we're accidentally training them is don't make up your mind, don't make up your mind, don't make up your mind, make up your mind in the last second. That's not how we want to pass. What we need them to do is train to see the ball off the hand, and shortly after that ball's off the hand, make a decision, in or out. If it's in, you play it. If it's out, you let it go out. And every now and then it's gonna catch the back line, because these kids, they don't have a great sense for judging the ball. But I don't want them to teach them to wait, and make their decision late. See it, make your decision, stick with it. And following the ball to the line doesn't help. The asterisk is loopy stuff, because when the ball's up in the air, it's a little harder. Just the judgment is a little bit different. So loopy stuff, super loopy stuff, and like high free balls, that they will move with the ball. But hard and flat, make your decision and take it or don't take it.
Yeah. We've got about maybe 10, 15 minutes at the most here, so I want to get through these last few questions. Is there anything that you've changed your mind about recently, this season, last season? I don't know. Is there? You're giving us opinions all the time, and they're valuable, and I think they're well thought out, well crafted, and well researched. But is there anything that you specifically have stopped and said, wait a second, why am I doing this? Let's look at this, and then you've changed your mind?
There's definitely lots of stuff that I do or have done that I end up not doing later, or stuff like that, for sure. Just the way you asked that question, I try to be slow to make up my mind, I guess I would say, first of all. So that's not like, I'm not saying that to like pat myself on the back or anything like that. I'm just trying to say, like, as coaches, it's I think it's also important to delineate between what we know and what we have like an opinion on. Meaning, like, I don't think I've changed my mind on anything that I know, because I try to pick very few things where I feel like pretty strongly about. And then there's lots of stuff that I'm like, I want to give this a shot and see. Like, I would probably say most of the stuff that I would be doing as a coach, it's like, I want to give this a try and see how it works. And then there's a few things I'm like, I know this stuff. That stuff is less likely to change. But some of the stuff that I probably maybe, do I want to try something different? Do I want to change it? Probably, probably a big one, I would say, that I changed over the last few years would be, I used to have the opinion that if you have a lower level team, for lower level team, I kind of just mean like a high school age team, meaning like not a collegiate level team, or not a high school or club team of like a whole bunch of players who are about to be playing in the Big Ten. Like that's like a borderline college team, right? Okay.
Sure.
So I'm talking about like even like a normal good high school team, like, okay, for like a little lower level, I was the opinion of like, the lower level your middles are, you need to set them slower. So because, hey, they're not as dynamic, you gotta give them a little more time. They don't hit us, okay, etc. like that. I've actually kind of changed my opinion on that, because part of it is the fact that kind of high school club volleyball, blocking is not that great. Teams don't necessarily scheme for you, and it's kind of easy to just set your left side attacker, who's probably your best hitter, and you can just set on the ball. And the other team, even if they kind of know it's coming, they don't defend it great. Or usually a lot of teams are not just gonna like send two blockers over there before you even set the ball. So then it's kind of like, well, what are we doing with our middle? They're not as good of a hitter as our outside, if that's the case. And it's not like we're not really making anything difficult to defend. So I've actually kind of changed to the fact that actually like the lower the level your middle is, especially like relative to your outside hitter, set them faster. And then even if they can't hit it, even if all they can do is kind of jam and throw it and dunk it, it's actually can be pretty difficult to defend. And it's actually like a real fast, quick to a kind of medium hitter, but a hitter who has kind of got the timing figured out, who can, even if they don't really hit it that hard, they kind of just dunk it or throw it down, can actually be pretty hard to defend. So I've kind of reversed my course on that. And I used to not be too into setting fast middle, especially in high school, but now I like setting it a little faster than I used to.
Nice. Okay. Alyssa, by the way, said great advice. Thank you, guys. I want to talk to you about Club W a little bit because you are doing something that not a lot of clubs in our country are doing, and you are incorporating beach volleyball into your training, seemingly on a pretty regular basis. And you had told me before we actually started recording that come March, when your season is over, they're going to go strictly to beach. Can you talk about why you do that and where you see the advantages or disadvantages, maybe?
Yeah, we'll see how well it works because obviously this is our first year launching it, so I don't want to take any victory laps before. But talk about why we're giving it a shot, and maybe some other coaches are thinking about doing similar things or trying out some similar things. Part of it kind of goes to this idea again because I've always had my toe in the club water, but I've been spending a lot of time in professional, you know, collegiate, professional, national team settings. And you talk to these people, and they'll kind of always say, well, it's all about being a well-rounded player. Don't specialize. Do a little bit of everything. Um, and they'll say, yeah, playing indoor, playing beach is great. Like there's a lot of that, and it's also kind of like the idea of everybody kind of agrees that kids need more free play, and then everybody overschedules their kids. So there's kind of some of this factor is a few things. One, I am extremely convinced that like the best cross training for indoor volleyball is beach volleyball. Just in terms of the well-rounded skills, etc. And I'm also convinced that the best cross training for beach volleyball is indoor volleyball. Even if you're primarily beach player, the indoor game is more powerful. And there's going to be some things that you're going to have to deal with that are more difficult than you play on the beach, and vice versa. So I think they both complement each other really well. And the reality is, we talk a lot about kids being multi-sport athletes, and there's benefits of multi-sport. And I totally agree with that in a theoretical sense. And then the problem is when you're multi-sport, is sending them to a psychotic basketball coach that's going to make them run sprints for 2 hours, and then they're going to come to your club practice. I don't know. Could be, but and then the reality is, there's a lot of kids that just want to play volleyball. They don't want to play basketball or soccer or softball, anything like that. So, and parents, kids don't free play as much, and it's harder to do it. But I think properly set up indoor and beach conjunction can have an effect of lessening the sport specialization, because even though they're both volleyball, they're a lot different. And there's opportunities for different movement patterns. There's opportunities for a break between one or the other. There's opportunities for one or the other to serve as more of the free play to the other at different times of the year. So that's kind of the logic. is backdooring some of these things that we know are beneficial for players, but our current system, it's just, we're not going to go back to the 50s or even the 80s when kids are going to go play so much. They're going to just go play pickup volleyball for 9 months of the year and then play for the high school team. This is not what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing is we know that autonomy, and when it's your choice to do it, there's a higher level of investment. And, you know, so what we've done is instead of having three practices a week, which I think like a lot of club teams is 2 practices a week, I think is by far the most common. And then teams that maybe like, hey, they're trying to play at a higher level, they're aiming for an open level play or something like that, they'll go to the 3 days a week. Maybe they pick up a weekend or something like that, or Friday or something like that. And so what we decided is instead of having that, we have 2 practices a week, but then we have a bunch of opportunities to pick up some extra stuff. So it's kind of 2 mandatories and some more options. And part of it is because of how we can rent gyms and some stuff like that. But we have a Tuesday, Thursday structure that's kind of your team practice. And then usually there's a Monday or Friday or possibly both where there's some optional stuff. Now, and you guys in Arizona, you're probably a full year-round beach. North Carolina is not quite there, kind of. Like you definitely can practice beach in December, January, February, but you're going to get some practices canceled because of cold/weather. But you're semi year-round. So in the heart of the indoor season, Tuesdays and Thursdays are the indoor practices, and Mondays and Fridays are opportunities for some beach volleyball. It's voluntary, you sign up, it's a little extra, but there's some opportunities. So there's some kids that sometimes they're in their 4 days. So Monday, Friday, they'll play some beach. Tuesday and Thursday, play some indoor. And the certain kids or certain weeks, you have more going on. Okay, it's only 2 days a week. Then obviously it's like if you got a multi-day tournament Saturday, Sunday, you're probably not doing beach on Friday, right? Because you're traveling anyway.
Right.
So it naturally has a good, and then we've kind of compressed the schedule. So we have 8 multi-days between, we actually play this weekend. There's like the super early tournament in December. We're like, yeah, give it a shot. And then our last one of the 8 is March 20th. That's Northeast qualifier in Philly. So then that's going to be kind of the end of that season. And then we have like it's actually a little bit more than 2 months where we're Tuesdays and Thursdays flip to being beach. And then we'll have some opportunities on Monday or Friday for kids if they want to do some extra indoors. We might have some open gym opportunities. We might have a kind of a small group lesson type stuff. But we kind of flip it where then Tuesdays and Thursdays become beach. Then your main focus becomes beach. And then 3 weeks before nationals, kind of hop back indoors to get ready again for nationals. But that's kind of the way that we have the season set up to allow kids to be able to do both. Do we have a few kids that they're just indoor, they have no interest at all in beach? That's fine, they don't have to do it. And then there's a few kids that beach is their main thing. But this is good because it allows them to still stick with indoor and get the benefits of that, even though they know beach, like they're going for playing beach in college, etc. And then most of the kids are kind of in the middle. They like both. They get some benefits out of both. We'll see where it goes. And I think the goal is to support their overall development as players and have some fun when they're doing it. Because the indoor tournament schedule really does get long and grinding. And I think having that spring, we really get away from it for a little bit. I think it's beneficial.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I wish more clubs would look at that as an option. Last question. Like I said, I want to be cognizant of your time. You are a volleyball guru. You have been around professional, college, high school, club. You've coached probably 12s. You've been in different countries. You've seen a lot. What do coaches in the United States do well, and what do we need to do better? And I'm talking primarily now, probably at the club and high school level, but where do you see some advantages that we've got, and where do you see some deficits as far as coaching goes that we can get better at?
I love this question because it allows me to kind of give my favorite answer, which is there's no United States when it comes to coaching, and it's it's a strength. It can at times be a weakness of the United States, but I think it's overall strength is there's about as many ways that it's being done in the United States as there are coaches and clubs. There's no, to me, there's no unified system of American volleyball. I mean, obviously the national team systems are influential and coaches that have been involved in national team are influential, and there's a lot of, yeah, of course. But I think it's one of the good things about the United States is there's a lot of different ways that people are doing it, and that's good. I think experimentation is good. I think trying things is good. I don't think that every coach in the United States needs to look at what the national team is doing or what me, somebody who's been involved with the national teams, is doing. I think getting out and trying it and observing, that's how I learned. I learned by imitating or learning from quote unquote advanced coaches and trying it and seeing what works, seeing what I could do. So I think that's good. I think sticking with that theory of experimentation, trying it out is valuable. I think probably, I don't want to say like American coaches necessarily, but I would probably just say because girls volleyball is so much more popular in the United States than boys because of the collegiate, because of the funding, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Probably your typical international coach in Europe or Asia is just more familiar with men's volleyball than, on average, than a lot of girls volleyball coaches are in the United States.
Okay.
And then I just think that just means that you're missing a potential source of information. So if there are coaches here listening to this whose only real interaction with volleyball is girls volleyball, then I think you should watch our men's national team play or any national team. Watch, like you said, watch France or Italy or Poland, all those national teams, or find some boys volleyball. If you're watching beach volleyball, you know, check out the guys. That's usually not a problem. People involved in beach are usually pretty aware of men's and women's sides more
Right.
equally in the States. But on the indoor side, sometimes there is a little bit of blinding because it's just, hey, another source of good information and trying things out. There's stuff that if your primary background is men's volleyball, you can learn from the women's side and vice versa.
Yeah. Joe, I want to say thank you from our region and for the folks that are tuned in. You're a great resource. Hopefully we can have you back maybe after your indoor season's over and chat about a bunch more things. I cannot stress enough to everybody listening and everybody that will be on the recording that your blog is just gold. It's literally the one I wait for every week, and when it comes out a couple times a week, it rarely, if ever, disappoints. It's always good stuff and things that you can actually apply a lot of times to what you're doing. But is there anything that you want to plug or talk about or let everybody know about? And also, if they have other questions for you, is there a way to get a hold of you later?
Yeah. So if you go it's smartervolley.substack.com. You search on Substack for Smarter Volley, or you just Google Smarter Volley or Joe Trinsey, the triangle, volleyball, all that kind of stuff. I'll be pretty hype on the search results. You'll be able to find it. And if you drop me a message on there, I'll give you and say that, hey, you heard this on the Arizona region webinar. I'll give you guys put you on a free month or something like that. What's the best way? I'm happy to share my email. Should I drop it in the chat here? Is that people can see that, or do you want to send just
How about you
what
just
is my
say it,
email?
because that way if it's recorded, then people can they can
Okay.
still get hold of you.
It's jtrinsey@gmail. So the letter J and then Trinsey, like my last name, at Gmail. Yeah, shoot me an email. Say you want to find out more about Smart Volley, or just if you have any kind of question. I love talking volleyball, and yeah, I love talking volleyball with volleyball coaches.
Joe, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time. I hope everybody enjoyed this, and we will be scheduling more of these as we go. But Joe, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
So thanks for having me.